Which real-life cheat codes do you know? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Admit your mistakes quickly and without undue apologies. Self-flagellation. Not only will people trust you more, you'll usually move on from the mistake much faster. As a teacher, I am one of only a few at my school who don't mind admitting mistakes to my students. They tend to be in shock when I do so for the first time. Then they kind of get used to it, and most tend to be able to admit their mistakes when talking to me easier, quicker, once they've gotten to know me for a while, normally during the second year of me teaching them. Very confident kids tend to call me out for my mistakes once they get how I work, and I usually thank them, but also make sure they talk politely when they do so. I hope at least some of my kids learn the admitting mistakes is not a big deal, and that you can both call someone out for making a mistake without being a crap. Story 2. If you have a hobby, relegate one day a month, at least, to doing something major tied to it. If you like fishing in the afternoon some days, set aside a whole day to start early, go to that place you wanted to fish at, and set up for the whole day to do what you enjoy. I, personally, like tanks. I make model kits and play games involving them. So, once a month, I make it a point to find a museum that's hosting tanks and go visit it. Bovington is a 2-hour drive, but I never feel like it wasn't worth it, even if I'm just wandering around stuff I've seen before. Simply find a big thing tied to your hobby and do it. You'll find that hobby far more engaging. Story 3. Don't put who an email will be sent to until after you have it ready to send, so you can't accidentally send unedited or unfinished emails. Extra tip. If you can't remember who you're going to send it to when you get back to it the next day, just write it at the top of the email above your greeting. Then when you go to reread it before sending, you'll realize you need to remove the name. I also apply this to important texts. And if I'm replying to someone, I'll erase the recipient name until I'm ready to send. A couple of bad experiences early in my career taught me to always CYA, and that has flowed over to my personal life when needed. Story 4. Confidence can get you super far. Like, if you just act extremely confident and normal and totally fine about whatever it is you're doing, anything nearly, people won't question it. You're supposed to be here, just walk on in, or out, or whatever. That's the attitude to have. I cannot believe how well this works for some of the nicest people, as well as the biggest jerks alive. It works. Avoid using this trick in an interview if you don't have the necessary skills to back it up. I used to interview people that would show up with all the confidence. One guy had literal binders showcasing his work and accomplishments. All it took was a single basic industry knowledge technical question to watch him crumble. Another guy was sharing an example about his experience as a supervisor. Simple follow-up questions started to show the cracks in his pre-prepared story. He even switched the gender of the team member in his example halfway through. Confidence is good in most cases, but make sure not to overplay your hand when there are competent people around. Story 5. People like talking about themselves more than they like hearing about you. If you interact with people for work, memorize one thing about them. Could be a kid's name, a sport they like, a hobby they do, their job, etc. Ask them about it every once in a while. People are always surprised and appreciate your interest in them. Also works to have in pocket to keep people talking when you want to let them feel like a conversation was had where you didn't have to contribute anything, and good for a distraction. I was good at performing my job tasks physically, but bad about getting formality paperwork signed on time. I knew my boss loved her elaborate weekly hair routine, worrying over her parents, and tea. I'd walk in with a paperwork stack, compliment her hair, and she'd sign everything without glancing while unspooling all about how it took 2 hours to dry, and then she'd roll it, and then. Story 6. I took over after my boss retired. I knew the day was coming for a good few years. It was a natural succession. Anyway, I had to train 5 new employees out of the 8 of us over 2 years. I made it a goal to get to know them, know their wives and kids' names, their interests, all kinds of stuff. Every single morning I host a meeting with everyone, and always bring up if anyone has anything to say or get off their chests. And because we're all so tight-knit, there's always stories, struggles going on, exciting news, and just general conversation before I let them go. I work directly for the Prez CEO, and we always get compliments from him about how well trained my people are, how well we all jive together and help each other out when we need it. It's amazing what can come out of you investing just a little time into people. They become your friends, people you can trust. Story 7. Talk positive about people behind their backs. I started doing this at work about a year ago, and it has literally changed my life. I actually did this on Friday with my manager without realizing at first, LOL. We had a quick check-in where I talked to him about my mentor, who was previously an intern, I'm currently an intern, and how he's been doing a lot of the training for me and is super helpful and patient. It just kind of came out naturally without any forcing, so it took me a minute to realize why my manager smiled when I said that, LOL. Being able to talk positively about others is such a good quality to have, and I'm now realizing that it's something that I've always possessed, and I'm proud of myself for it. Story 8. Worked at a call center for a credit card company. If you ever get hit with a late fee, politely call customer service and ask if there's a possibility of getting it waived. We didn't have to ask a supervisor or anything, just pushed it through. Have done this multiple times now for my own cards. Don't pay late fees. Editing to add. If you do call customer service and they help you out, please stay on the line and fill out the survey and give them all perfect scores. We got big bonuses on our scores, and it really meant a lot when people took the time to do it. If you want to complain, do it in the comments box, not on the actual scores. One bad score can tank the bonuses even if it was a bad rating on the product, and not the service provided by the agent. Story 9. Have friends generationally older and younger than yourself, but also weirdly frowned upon. I have different friend groups. My closest friend group is my age, 7 to 12 of us. I have a group of older friends who let our dogs play together, 30 to 40 years older. Then I volunteer to manage and coordinate kids who are 15 to 20 years younger. Most of them, their parents are making them volunteer, or it's community service hours. There is something unbelievably valuable to learn from each group, but most dismiss the younger ones because they talk in a lit manner, but on God they have respect for the grind fam. Story 10. If you have something nice to say to someone, like you think they did something neat or have a cool shirt or made a good moral choice, it's generally good to say so and not wait for a better time to tell them. You may not remember or bother later, but most people really benefit from encouragement or appreciation when it's genuine. If you have some criticism or something rather mean to say, try to wait a bit. You may find you don't need to say it, or you may find a way to express it that will be more useful and digestible to the person, rather than just pissing them off. Obviously, they aren't always possible, but it's a good life hack to be kind and encouraging on the spur of the moment, and to be circumspect and thoughtful about criticism. Story 11. The first one's obvious. Everyone hates that awkward period at the end of a conf call, when it's pretty much over but no one's ready to just say it. If it's really over, don't hesitate to just say, "Awesome, thanks so much everyone, and have a great day." The second one's actually way more important. If you're in a meeting trying to land a contract, and they say, "Sounds good, let's do it," then shut up, shake their hand, say, "We'll get you a draft agreement tomorrow," and walk out the door. No small talk, and definitely no following up on that point we were discussing in the middle of the meeting that you seemed interested in. There's no upside. You can't make them more ready. They've already agreed. Best worst case is you bring up some kind of new point that makes them want to step back and talk more about the overall plan before they're ready to sign. Worst case is you bring up something they didn't realize and you scotch the deal before you've left the room, which I've seen happen more than once. Story 12. Clean while you're cooking. My wife used to get annoyed at me when I did this. She'd be like, "Why am I making myself tacos out of storage containers? Didn't you just make it?" And my answer would be, "Well, I cleaned up the stuff I made it with and put in those so it's easier to put away. Like, am I going to put it out on a plate or something just so she can feel fancy making a taco?" By the time we're done eating, I put the covers on what we didn't eat and wipe off the counter. The dishes and pots and pans or whatever are already done. Edit. I think a number of people are misunderstanding what I mean. I don't serve dinner in Tupperware. I mean, if I made a serve yourself or a taco bar-esque type dinner, I put it in the packaging that the leftovers are going to go in. I used to go all out on the presentation of the food and make the counter with all the fixins look fancy. I just cut it that middleman. Story 13. I got a job as security at a concert venue because ticket prices were getting insane and I wanted to see some shows. Turns out I also got to meet some rock stars. My dad was a manager until his 50 seconds when he just got burnt out like crazy. New leadership at the company, they didn't see eye to eye, etc. He decided to be a night shift security guard at the local university because he's a massive night owl. After a while, he started taking other jobs, football matches, concerts, conferences, because he now had a ton of time. It's crazy how much you stand out from other security guards if you know how to speak well and show some basic degree of intelligence. In my dad's case, it also helped that he speaks English since we live in Europe, and a security guard who speaks English is a rare sight. After a month or two, he was placed at the very important person at every single event. Football match? VIP lounge where he would get food and coffee. Concerts? Backstage where he got to meet the performers, and of course he got paid for it. Story 14. Drink water, stretch. Your lower back is sore because your hip muscles are tight-headed. Thanks for all the comments. I snowboard for a living and my body goes through a lot of abuse, but the same things apply to a less active lifestyle. Adding glutes to the stretching thing for back pain too, because they sort of come as a pair with your hips, in the sense of what muscles pull on your lower back. Do dynamic stretches before exercise. Avoid holding a position for more than a few seconds. Stretching too much before causes pulled muscles to happen easier. After exercise, after your muscles have cooled down, that's when you do the long static stretches where you hold for a while. The idea is to stretch the muscles around the group that has the pain because everything is connected. For my lower back, I like to start with my hip flexors and glutes, then quads, hammies, then calves, it band, then ankles, feet. After all that is loosened up, I then stretch out my back. Start mellow if you aren't very flexible. It's easy to overstretch your hamstrings and hips. Story 15. One that I used to know years ago. When I would come home from college, I worked for a home appliance rental company in delivery and install. Sometimes we would deliver coin card-operated laundry units to apartments. One time we did a full replacement of about 12 coin-operated washers and dryers to new Maytags that used a card system. The senior guy who drove our delivery truck and told me what to do showed me how to reset the units and make them automatically go into run mode and how to force off the system just by pushing buttons. No keycard needed, nothing to unlock or disassemble. He was surprised by how many questions I asked, and he was pleased that I was showing interest in the work and said as much. Well, yeah, I said. These are the same exact units we have at college. I'm never paying for laundry again. He looked at me for a solid 10 seconds, rubbed his eyes and said, I'm going to pretend I didn't just hear that. Whenever I asked questions from then on, he always asked why I wanted to know. Didn't pay for laundry anymore at school though. LOL. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.